That's why there's no audio. All right. That was a waste of time. I unchecked the wrong audio box. Isn't that just perfect? Okay, now we're in, and there's a bit of lag. But welcome to the first live stream that we're doing for Sunken Isles. It is essentially we're celebrating the launch, the fact that we've already reached our goal in what, like 35 minutes? That was crazy. I wasn't asleep. So anyway, if you guys have any questions about kind of how this is going to go, wait, what? Now it's there. Okay, that's what the lag is. So right here, now we know. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and just throw our co-host right into this mix. Transfer over. Cracking open the right audio, hopefully. You're in. Welcome, my friend.
I exist.
You exist
yes.
now. Okay.
I have arrived.
You have. Only a few seconds in, and here we go. What's up, man?
Not much, Logan. How are you?
I'm doing good.
How you feeling? How you feeling? Your baby has been birthed back out into the world for the thrice time.
It exists. Everything. It's a big relief because now I can talk about it to people, just like candidly. Sure. It's not, oh, I'm hiding this, or oh, I don't know what to talk about because I'm working on something I can't tell you about. Now we're here and we get to talk about it. This will be fun.
It's exciting. It's exciting time.
Mm-hmm. So as a part of this live stream, we're going to be having a few guests pop in and out, people that have been involved. We have, first off, it's going to be John Theodore. Hopefully he'll be joining us pretty soon, not too far away from right now. And then further down, we will be talking to Trisha from Honua Consulting. She is someone who is pretty heavily involved in the project. She really helped kind of guide us through, getting this setting really fitting the vision that we wanted to have. We wanted to make sure that we didn't misrepresent anything and that we wanted to kind of have our own project, an adaptation of all the themes that we played with, and we had some amazing people help us. And Solomon, do you know his last name? I should.
I don't think I do. I don't think I wrote it down.
Solomon is actually a very well-known Hawaiian digital artist, and he actually he works in a lot of different mediums. He's a really amazing at what he does.
Yeah, I've seen some of his work, very textured. It looks really cool.
Oh, yeah. I saw there was a video where he did like a whole 3D kind of like a model set, and there was a lot of really interesting just backstory and commentary that was integrated into the art piece. It was beautiful.
Sure.
What is the book exactly? It's actually Eldermancy's first full adventure supplement, and it's probably the only adventure supplement that takes you from level 1 to level 20 in an island setting through the course of roughly 20 sessions and 20 in-game weeks, so it moves very, very fast. We hope you like it. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Josh. Solomon Enos. Go ahead and look that up. He's got an incredible portfolio.
Like we've got someone in the chat called the Flamingo. I don't know if that's a Shrimp Lord reference yet, but
people move that fast. Yeah.
Yeah, people love that Shrimp Lord.
They do. Yeah, we have. I remember the baseline, like the design for Stibble's Codex was to have 70 different stat blocks, or around 70, and then we ended up hitting like 117. And in this book, now that we're done, we have a little over 70 stat blocks just at the end. So it is going to be chunky. I don't remember how big Seeker's Guide got, but that was really big. And I think this one actually has a higher page count overall.
Is that just because as you were like designing, you were like, all right, well, this area needs this many monsters, and well, they need to have one that's like this CR, and they need to have, and it just kind of kept expanding out from there.
That's one of the big problems that we kind of had to go at with this project is, okay, we have to kind of use as many monsters as we can to make sure it's balanced, like 1 to 20.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So there's just these locations where the people that I was working with, they were writing and they're like, okay, I want this monster here, and then I want to make something here. So I just get these lists of names and these cited locations where they're at. So I go in and I check out all these new monsters that I get to stat out. And man, it got to be a lot. But man,
that's some of the best fun. Writing stat blocks is great.
Clearly going to be a super diverse adventure. Like we have a bunch of different player races, all of which have cultures, some of which are isolated. So there's so much to explore and just so many different facets of the way that this adventure is going to flow. It's going to be super exciting. Also, this is a live stream that for the first time on my channel is actually public and visible from the beginning.
Right, you haven't had the ramp in.
No. Yeah, so welcome, you relatively massive amount of people. Oops. No, we're good.
It's always so odd doing a live stream though. Like I know that we're in front of however many people, but it's intimate. We're just having a conversation here. You, me, 120 other people,
It's definitely an interesting just medium transition, because normally I have the script that I write out and then I record it and then I cut down every or or mispronunciation.
Sure. Yeah.
So I shaved down an 8-minute recording to about 5 minutes.
That's the YouTube style, man. Waste no time. Just not even breaths. Just cut everything out. That's not content.
About what time is it? I really need to activate the clock on my computer. I turned it off for mental health reasons, but it's about time to introduce someone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. It's six past.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the Kickstarter has already hit its pledge, and we are now at a ridiculous amount. We're at almost $90,000 with almost 1,000 backers. You guys are incredible, and you move faster than my brain. And for those of you who haven't seen it, or for those of you who haven't backed yet, this will probably be a surprise for you if you didn't watch the video that I uploaded earlier today as well, because that's what we'll be watching. But we're going to be watching and listening to it with John Theodore, who is the composer, and he kind of helped us create the sound of this. Let me go ahead and add him. Change up the live stream here a little bit. Transition over. Cross my fingers. Hope it didn't. There we go. What's up, John?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not a whole lot and a whole lot of everything. What's going on with you?
Oh, just hanging out, ready to talk shop with you guys.
Awesome. So what was it like putting this one together? Because I asked that question with all the other ones in the last live stream, but this is a whole different project.
This was, and the time frame on this one was pretty condensed. And so I was asked to write the song right before Christmas, and I was heading out of town, and they were like, "Well, can you get us something before you leave?" And thankfully, you had already put the lyrics together, which is just such a huge help for me, because then I was able to walk around for a day and just kind of beat the cadence into my head and kind of figure out the rhythm before I even sat down with any instruments. And then figuring out like that, okay, this is taking place in a Polynesian setting. I ran out and grabbed a ukulele from the local music shop, and got home, learned a couple of chord structures on that thing, and literally busted the song out in like an hour.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And then we also got it mixed together with some beautiful vocals from Anna Pantsu, Cami Cat, and someone that I'm not too familiar with. Do you know?
Jason. Yeah, he's he's a French singer, and he's awesome voice. All three of them. When I got the vocals back and mixed it into the final track, it was just like, oh yeah, instantly.
Perfect.
But yeah, it was fun putting this one together, just getting to use just as many like authentic sounds as I could find. So I found this really cool sample library where this guy, Ari, who lives in Papua New Guinea, went out and recorded sounds from his village. He recorded slit drums, which are hollowed out logs, and I just used everything pretty much that he had recorded and mashed it together with my ukulele and the singing. So
that is really cool. I guess without further ado, we can go ahead and give that a listen right now. If I can pull it up. There we go. Transition there, because that looks a little funky. If you guys could go ahead and mute yourselves so we get some clean audio here. I'll mute mine. And let's get into it.
We sail through hell, the king at our prow, seeking the peace our king he did vow. Land we beheld, the isles we found, and so on for the future we ran aground. The isles were kinder than we
could have thought. We traded what little of goods that we brought, but kindness is not what the old ecophs sought. We took to the land, sea, and stone that we wrought.
The prideful King Scotty we thought was our guide, but like any leader, the monster he lied. We're not for the locals, they're magical heart. The island, the people, they all did their part.
The promise away from us and turned our homes to crumbling dust.
That's why we came first and why we returned. The Isles don't want us, they've sent us to burn. So we curse the children who learn how to stay. They celebrate peace and winning today.
Little do they see the game that they play. The future of Muckhuff is turning to gray.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Mike is muted again. I'm having a good time, you guys. Yeah, I said that was beautiful, and then you guys heard silence for a minute, and you're about to, and then we're going to get the replay from the chat there. But yeah, a few things that I didn't notice before were majorly the animation and the editing, which are some of the recent additions to that. But I love the fight scene between Kata and Scotty. Just the two of them clashing together, and the way that he throws that spear is really awesome.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The artworks. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, when I was working on it, all I had were just a couple of just really rough sketches. And then, yeah, like seeing the entire thing put together with everything, it was just mind blowing. Just the animation, the artwork, just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying this earlier today, but the artwork's got a dream, like it's not quite dreamlike. There's something like I'm describing it as nostalgia, even though I don't have like personal nostalgia for tropical islands or anything like that. There's just something about the colors and the hues and the sky, the colors in the sky, and then mixing that with the music. There's just something, it just tickles a nerve that I can't quite describe in my brain. I absolutely love it.
Like we were talking about in the podcast, actually, it's very much like a vacation setting. It's somewhere that a lot of people would just kind of dream about being, and it's a magical location that was sort of made to fit that kind of want that people have, and then it's placed in this random location where all these other continents around it have no idea what it is, how to treat it, how the magic works there. So people start coming to this like hidden tropical paradise that has its own sort of system of magic. It has its own way that it functions and that it works. And naturally, it has a lot of like horror themes. You have this villain that shows up that is draining blood from people under the guise of this loving king who is taking people to a promised land and then performing unseemly rituals. So there's a lot of really interesting kind of clashing themes that I think are a lot of fun to explore.
The contrast between the tropical island and then King Scotty is cool. Marius Boda, who's from the art director from Ghostfire, has just done a really, really fantastic job putting that together with his team.
Absolutely. Let's see some questions. What would be the best instrument for a bard in this kind of setting? That's actually probably a better question for you, John, because what kind of instruments, I guess, did you explore when putting this together? Maybe the ones that you landed on.
So there is a flute that is played by blowing through the nose. And I was messing around with that for a little while. Couldn't really find a place for it in this song. But if I were a bard on this island, you'd probably see me going around blowing through my nose with the flute.
Yeah, I also feel very much like some of the more nomadic people in the islands would carry around drums just to beat them kind of in a rhythmic sense. And I would think to some degree that's almost like a natural, you're kind of warding away these predators by alerting them to your presence in this very sustained rhythm, which is like, oh, they're not changing their behavior. So
yeah,
there's a certain confidence to playing just a tune while you're wandering.
Definitely. Yeah. And maybe the flute would be a bad idea because that flute specifically is used for courting. So I don't know how much of a love story is going on the island, but the flutes originally were crafted by the male suitor would craft a flute really quick and then sit with his love and stick it up his nose and play for her.
That is
Perfect
awesome.
bard. Perfect bard instrument.
Perfect bard.
Yeah.
I've got one for everyone I've ever met. this spool of flutes. That's good.
Where can we relax and have fun until the undead army show up? Logan, do you want to speak a bit about, is it Manaki, the kind of main settlement?
Manaki, the name of the location is called the Isles of Manaki, and
Sure.
Makulf, which is
Makulf,
a
that's
merger
what I'm
of
thinking
the people native to Manaki and the arriving Ikulf, these dwarven kind of Norse settlers. And annually there is an event that happens that is kind of the kickoff to the game, where it's a spring festival that's actually very similar to one that is traditionally celebrated in Hawaii, where I think they go around the entire island with this troupe. But in contrast to that, it's where everyone from all the surrounding isles come together to this one settlement and just celebrate kind of the history that they have, the like trouble that they've faced and what they've been able to bring out of it. So there's a lot of unique magic in the way that it functions in the setting, and they sort of celebrate that. They tell the story of how they came together by literally splitting the stars into just constant motes of light that float overhead. And then right after that, there's an explosion, one of the best things to start off an adventure. And later you find out the reason that the explosion happened and what's been happening in the past, and everything starts to rapidly collide. But yeah, what was another
Awesome.
one? Someone asked what monster or what animal have you taken most inspiration from to create a monster? I think the most interesting monster in the book is something called the doghouse bush, and it is a plant that grows its own seeds and it launches them out on these really tight ropes like chains. And these vines that it has attached to these seed, they start growing into like root systems that resemble dogs, and that's how they collect a lot of their nutrients in order to sort of fuel an internal leaf-covered dog that defends the bush. So it takes after like a bunch of different traits from other animals, and it becomes this really effectively defensive plant that if you're able to get one of these seeds after fighting it, you can plant it, and as like over the course of the weeks as the adventure goes, it's going to be a really big benefit later on when you're doing firefights to save Makulf. Let's see where we are. Yeah, I guess we're just exploring the story. Well, thank you, John. I guess you can pop out if you want.
Definitely.
We're just going to kind of go through the setting a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, and just a quick note, if anybody wants, February 18th, the song will be on Spotify and all streaming services.
Awesome. That is
So
good
next Friday. And then if anybody wants to play along, I have the ukulele sheet music and lyrics on my YouTube channel, which I don't know if is linked somewhere on here.
I think it's linked in the description of this, and it's also linked in the description of the music video that's posted on my channel.
Rock and roll. So yeah, bust out your ukuleles, everybody. Have some fun playing. And thanks for having me on board, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thanks, John.
Let's transfer that over.
Can you talk to me about the decision to go? So it's 20 levels in 20 weeks, right? Yeah. So in game weeks, not weekly sessions. Mm-hmm. Did you know, like, what was the decision to make sure this adventure went to level 20? Was that a decision that you made, or it just kind of evolved that way as you were writing it?
Well, I had the idea for the setting, and I wanted this triad of villains. Just I essentially the players are supposed to be inserted into this setting that is already alive, and everything's happening not because of what they've done, which I feel it gives a lot of really good agency, and it makes the world feel more alive. That the world's about to end. Well, if like we can maybe do something about it, but if we can't, it's not our fault.
Sure.
So I kind of put these people together, and I had this idea for what if this villain's doing this thing? What if another villain that's local to the area is doing this? And then what if the creator comes in and sees these problems and decides to stop everything from happening.
Sure.
So I brought a few players in from my Patreon, and we play tested it. And I was like, okay, I really want this to happen somewhat quickly. Like I don't want to drag this out. I want to get from the beginning and the end to the end of the adventure, and I want it to be possible. Because normally campaigns fizzle out. It's like, you play
for sure.
5 or 6 different sessions, and then suddenly there's schedule conflicts and everything. So what if we have one that you can specifically play over 20 episodes, with each episode taking roughly a session, if the GM wants to do that. Like they can linger in locations, they can try and explore them and flesh them out, but we wanted it to be efficient for players, and we wanted to explore the idea of what if we built locations that are like, they have problems that are level 5, and you can either come back to them and see that those problems have escalated up to level like 13 or 17, or there's something at this place where you're running around like helping people bake cakes or whatever, and that there is something very nearby that is either a looming threat or something that is super valuable, but you can't get it yet because it's too dangerous. So it gives you incentive to come back to these places, and it was a fun kind of narrative challenge just to put together, I think.
It's like a living sandbox, right? Like might be contained to the islands of Manaki itself, or Monarchy, my apologies, but it is
either or. It started in Britain.
Fair. But it changes. If you go and play in a different corner of the sandpit for a couple of levels, and then you come back to another area you've already visited, that's changed. And I think that's great for dungeon masters, right? Because there's a lot of focus on players playing the game, being the protagonists of the story, but giving the dungeon master the opportunity to role play their characters kind of off screen and develop the story off of what the impact the players have had in the world is cool. It's cool that it doesn't just go into static mode every time the players are off screen.
Yeah. Flamingo, I am sorely sorry. Thank you for the donations, man. But this is as loud as my mic gets. I need to get it figured out, but I have talked to a bunch of people. I have tried everything. That is as loud as it gets. So I went ahead and lowered your audio just a little bit. So hopefully people can just bump theirs up and it'll be fine.
Bump theirs up, yeah, fair.
If not, that's just stinky.
That said, you do have the perfect whispering sweet nothings voice.
Yeah, it's just natural ASMR. I can't stop it. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It might have something to do with just the way that the audio gets picked up, because I have a very low frequency voice. So I am the background noise that it's trying to remove.
Your voice is so buttery that microphones cannot pick it up. That's what we're going with. Somebody did ask a question about climates. Is there a variety of different environments and climates? Are the islands environmentally different?
We didn't want to overlap Chult, and we didn't want to have rain and water and pestilence be one of the major oppositions when we have these celestial aliens coming in and scooping people up, and we have these undead from other locations trying to collect numbers. But so we have new sailing mechanics that we'd really like to add to the game. That's one of our stretch goals, and if we do get that, that's going to be one of the major parts of sailing, is going to be the weather that you're facing. And then because the location's magical, you're facing magical weather that we want to explore. But each of the locations do definitely have climates. There's somewhere called the Turntail Swamp, which has a variant rule where your players basically have to get sick from visiting there, which is why it's in the later levels. It's a very hostile, toxic location. But we have, a few here and there. But for the most part, it is generally just nice, tropic, breezy ocean weather. Where are we at? 24. We've got someone in the waiting room. All right, yeah. So I think we're just waiting for Solomon, if that's not one or the other. But we'll add them together. Actually, you know what? I can just add them to the call, and then I can transfer over to the 4-person one. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Cool. So it'll be a little choppy here just because that's how the overlay works, but fun. Welcome, mystery guest. Okay. Hey, Solomon, what's up?
Aloha, how's it going?
It's going good. We just saw iPad in the waiting room, so I had no idea who we were waiting for.
Oh,
but
sorry.
welcome.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and rename myself.
That's perfectly all right. I'll go ahead and address the question while we're waiting. Thank you, Yummy Pirate Hostage, for the $10. You mentioned multiple islands and people coming together. How populated would you say the isles are, and how frontier-like are they? I really like such self-contained settings. Yeah, it's very self-contained. We have a lot of different cultures that are kind of divided in just the way that they operate. We have the Chitoni, which isolate themselves to their little lobster rock, and then we have the Kiai, who stay underground or underwater, and they conduct themselves in their own separate way. But there are a few minor settlements with smaller populations. A lot of people come and go, but this is where the Ikolf have kind of chosen to plant themselves. And then you have the native Manaki, which wander around all of these locations. But I think the overworld humanoid population is around like 2,000, 3,000. Okay, now that that's addressed, you're welcome to unmute yourself, join the conversation.
All right.
Just wanted to say I really love your body of work. It was after having written everything, I was kind of told to peruse your portfolio, and man, I'm upset that I didn't get to take inspiration from a lot of just the incredible visuals that you've put together. It's amazing stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor. Thank you. Well, I've been into Dungeons and Dragons and role playing from basically since I was like 7 or 8 with the original dungeon, monster manual. Yeah. And basically, what I've always wanted to do was here I live in Hawaii. I'm part Hawaiian. We're 1/3 of the Earth's surface, but we're super underrepresented when it comes to the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
And I also grew up reading the Silmarillion. And saying
really?
Look at all this, look at what Tolkien was able to do with, basically, a Finnish mythology. Oops, sorry, I have my camera. So with Finnish mythology and being able to then extrapolate and build upon this amazing mythos. And then I look around, I'm like, we have Hawaii, we have the Marquesas, we have Tonga, we have Samoa, we have the Marshall Islands, we have vast swaths of the Earth's surface. And until Moana came along, we're basically just, living on this, just this barely basic, thin level of what people think of the Pacific.
Yeah, that's what frustrates me about these smaller communities, is especially because they've just been isolated in the way that their culture was allowed to grow. It is so beautifully unique. Like everything I've read just about Polynesian mythology and Hawaiian mythology, or I guess that's not the right way of putting it. The lens at which they see the world is probably the best way to say it, but it is beautiful. And I've just fallen in love with a lot of definitely the spirituality is maybe.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, it's, and what's
no one knows what it is.
Yeah. Well, I've been involved in a bunch of different projects, and a big part of it is learning to translate our traditional myths and legends into new media. And along the way, as I'm reading, in Hawaii, we had about 150 independent newspapers spread throughout the islands at one time, and this was about almost 150 years ago. And at the time, Hawaii was second in literacy to Scotland. We were some of the most literate people on Earth. Oh. And the reason we did that was that we could capture all of these traditional stories that were just spoken word, and transform them through the technology of the printing press.
That's such a rapid community transformation. It's interesting that it was a collective decision to just learn to be literate. That is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was because we saw that through the impact of disease and all these other things, that our traditional knowledge was vanishing. And so my ancestors, we had the first printing press west of the Rockies. That's what I've heard.
Wow.
We adopted this new technology of transforming and capturing stories and turning them into printed word. But they've been printed word for too long. They need to be, they need to be in 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. They need to be visualized. They need to be in role-playing games. They need to be in video games. So, frankly, this is just the beginning of, I think, a much larger opening up of 1/3 of the Earth's surface that is super underrepresented. And I'm so honored to be.
I really hope that we just have a wave. Some of it. Just a wave of new culture that we get to visit and explore and run through, because we're a little stale. I think you can kind of agree in mainstream media. It's gotten into a bit of a loop. I think that'd be a great tangent to break into. Hopefully we're setting a bit of a trend here. Let's actually see where our funding goal is at right now. I think we're about to hit, well, I mean, we've hit enough stretch goals. We are at 88,000, which means, where are we? Is that 2 donations or 3? Sorry, I'm looking at the stretch goals. My bad.
Just while you're taking a look at that, Logan, I wanted to ask you, Solomon, you've spoken a lot about literature. What is it about the visual medium that speaks to you? What do you like to express about, culture and stories through the visual medium? Why were you attracted to that when you started learning to express yourself?
For the very reason that we were able to capture a tremendous amount of our traditional stories in print, and they were words, but there wasn't a lot of translation that were taking these stories about lizard women and shape-shifting shark men and all this. There were no images that went along with it. And so what I've been able to do is I've been able to say, hey, let's take it from this written word and let's move it into the visual realm. And for example, we have a lot of stories of shape-shifting. I mean, we have shape-shifters absolutely everywhere. We have people that could transform into a giant boar, and then they could transform into like plants, and they could transform into fish, and they could do all these really radical things. And it was really a kind of an allegory for how deeply connected we were to the natural world, how deeply connected we were to the winds, to the rains, to all these deep for us it was like the magic was already all around us,
that's what I love so much about those non-divisive belief systems, where we're not from somewhere else, we're not designed by something else, we are a part of this amazing massive image that is moving all at once. I love just the concepts of unity that are in Hawaiian culture.
Absolutely. And again, what you guys are doing here is pretty much, I have to say, first to market, in the sense that I really haven't come across any other platform, any other role-playing game system, or anybody who's seriously taken the Pacific into consideration. There might be a few on the edges here on the tangent, but you guys are kind of breaking through here. This is really first to market kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when working with you folks, the folks that I've been working with, Marius and the folks on the design team they're so respectful, they're so appreciative and they're really open to giving space, like for myself and other folks that you guys have been working with, to really trust you folks with this information, because this is stuff that's coming from my ancestors. It's been handed to me, and if I can hand it off to the world, to the right people who are going to tell the stories in the right way, then it means a lot to me. And everything that I've seen up to this point, and what I would imagine moving forward, I think it really feels like you guys have a strong respect for our culture, and that means a lot to me. And that means I'm going to be able to share secret stuff that I probably wouldn't give away to anybody else. So there's so folks that are getting involved in this, they're getting the nectar. They're really getting to the nectar of Pacific and Islander cultures. And we're bringing some of our warmth and some of our sunshine to some places that might be kind of chilly right now.
Yeah, I think it's definitely just because media is really moving in kind of a strange direction. For I think a lot of groups, this is kind of a scary territory to approach because no one knows about it. So it's the easiest thing to misrepresent is to go into this blindly with the small amount of written media that we have, and any amount of time frame wouldn't be able to do it direct respect. But it's really good just to kind of cut into the meat and show people that this is something that is absolutely worth exploring and worth taking the time to appreciate.
Awesome.
There was one question there that in Moana, there's that scene with the little coconut pirates, and someone wanted that in the book. That is actually not directly from Hawaiian mythology. That's from a whole different set of Islander beliefs that they added in. I forget the name of it, but I looked it up a long time ago just because I was watching Moana, and I was like, who are these little guys? And they're from a different group.
Yeah. Well, while we have Moana on topical right now, what's a really interesting thing that I want people to think about, Maui, in most of the traditional stories, was the runt. He was small.
Right.
He was so when you have this oversized Maui, that's like, what's the point of that? Maui is supposed to be the trickster, the one that you think, he doesn't have power. He's the nobody.
Yeah.
He surprises everybody. So Maui is supposed to be this much more like a rogue, much more like
like Loki,
you know what I mean?
kind of.
Right, exactly. So you really wouldn't, so the whole idea of like making him this big bulky guy, like his strength stat and his constitution stat isn't supposed to be that high.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
His wisdom and intelligence stats, that would be much more representative of what Maui is. His charisma, that's Maui. Strength and constitution, nah. Not so much.
I really think that in the film, when they give the backstory to kind of who he was and what he was doing, and he takes these just rapidly shifting forms to overcome these situations, it's like I could feel that was the mythology, was very specific transformations to overcome very specific things. Yeah. And he is like very secretly invasive. So I think the main reason they made him a giant hunk of a character is because they wanted to pay for The Rock. And you can't have a stronger Rock. Yeah. That's fine,
Yeah. That's why this is a chance for you guys to get it right. So that's why we're getting it right now. So that's why it's awesome.
Cool. Oh, there's Trisha. Okay. I really hope she hasn't been waiting long. That's such a small part of my screen. Let's go ahead and transfer right over. Don't freeze on me. Are we good? There's a chair. Okay.
The dramatic entrance we're going for.
Oh, you know what?
She has the ring on currently, so that's why it's invisible. Oh, okay.
There we go.
Hey!
I just want to let you know I appreciate you.
Hello. Muted. Be just a second. Yeah, okay, I'll agree with that. It was meant to be sort of a... whatever. Not my place. We'll give her a second there. Let me check the time frame.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
I just got the coolest gift from somebody who works for me. He brought me a Native Hawaiian kingdom currency from 1883. So
that's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing. So this is like I've never seen one before. So very exciting.
Welcome, Trisha. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, happy to.
We were just kind of going over really the only two, this project and Moana, the only two publicly aware sort of fictional representations of such a unique, isolated culture. Or underrepresented would be a better word for that. But how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
That is good to hear. We're kind of just going around gauging questions.
2022 keeps moving, so.
Oh, so fast.
Not stopping for anyone.
Say how wonderful Solomon is. Let me just be super clear. I'm just here for that. And everybody should know who he is, and everybody should be experiencing his phenomenal work. So I'm really just the cheerleader here.
And he is right in the description there. So I encourage everyone to go down and click, I think, the first link in the description of this stream. Oops.
Yeah,
bless you, Trisha.
Well, we've known each other a long time, brother. So, Solomon's been doing phenomenal things for a very long time. So I am super excited about this opportunity for him and for Purple Maya.
Yeah. That is good to hear. Actually, Ben, since you might be a little bit more directly involved, because I was not a part of one or two of those calls. Could you run us through, or actually, you know what, Trisha, you probably are a lot more knowledgeable. If you could run us through Purple Maya.
I'm actually going to kick it to Solomon, who knows way more about, everything and Purple Maya. He will, because it's actually from the area he's from. And so a lot of the good work they do is very closely tied to him and his family. So I'll kick it to him.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I bless you, Trisha. I'm also a little bit tangentially related to what the work that they're doing, but the folks at Purple Maya, and Maya is banana, so it's kind of like our response to Apple, but we're talking about bananas. So it's basically this idea of helping to translate traditional stories, traditional values, traditional wisdom into new media. Basically, what I was sharing earlier, we had the first printing press west of the Rockies. We had 150 independent Native Hawaiian newspapers. And the goal that my ancestors, what they said was, basically they needed to capture these stories and turn them into seeds. Because if we don't turn them into seeds, they're going to rot, they're going to languish, they're going to be forgotten. And so Hawaiian culture is one of the rare examples of a resurgent culture, of a resurgent language. We've had, for lack of better terms, we already had our apocalypse and we're surviving anyway. I'd even say we're 1,000 times stronger because we're surviving, and that we can actually, I think, stand in solidarity with a lot of other cultures which haven't done as well, that haven't really survived impact with the outside world. And so part of what we've been able to do, and the folks at Purple Maya are doing, are basically looking at augmented reality, virtual reality, and looking on that end. But one thing that I always like to bring up and say, hey, sitting down to play Dungeons and Dragons is probably one of the best VR AR experiences you're going to get anyway. I think it's almost like a book is to a movie what a role-playing game is to a video game. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's my analogy that I'm gonna play with, is that there's something so wonderful about people sitting around the room and telling stories. And any game system is a set of laws and a set of rules that allows that story to run as smoothly as possible. And I was part of a very small group of people out in Waianae, where I'm from, and we were playing Dungeons and Dragons in our late elementary days. We were like that small little group of nerds with dice, and rolling things. But what Purple Maya folks have been doing is exactly this, is basically translating the stories into all the new media. And that includes board games, card games, we have a very strong game culture, and it's called, games in Hawaiian is a pa'ani. So our pa'ani culture is something that needs to be further developed. And that's something that really comes from, we have a wealth of information. We have a wealth of intellectual property. And if we don't propagate it and share it, folks like Disney will come along and happily do it for us. So we would rather be the ones telling those stories, and you folks are really helping to facilitate that. So we really appreciate it.
I think personally, just kind of in a bigger picture, long-term goal for making this is just giving you guys sort of a bigger audience, so that when you do set in stone, actually telling your genuine stories and retelling these histories in a similar way that we create these stories, we convolute them in D&D, that you'll have a sustainable audience, obviously, because that is something that a culture as wonderful as yours absolutely deserves.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. One direct question for you, Ben. How exactly are we involved in Purple Maya, specifically this with this Kickstarter?
So our stretch goals for this Kickstarter, every time we hit one, we're also donating $1,000 US to Purple Maya, because we want to be more than just sort of saying we're supporting, but we want to make sure that we are giving practical support to those communities. And Purple Maya do so much more than, they do education, but they're also about workforce development and providing opportunities. So we just felt that it was really important to provide more than just, lip service to them, and actually practically involve them in the project and give back to the community directly.
Cool.
Awesome.
Trisha, you essentially ran through the whole book. Thank you for that. And I guess, what's kind of your first impression? What do you think of not so much the project, but maybe kind of the setting and the story that we want to tell?
Well, I love it. Growing up in Hawaii, so often what we were raised with were stories and books and educational materials that in no way related to the universe in which we lived. So I think it's amazing that, you know, this younger generation and this new generation of Hawaiians can, especially those who are learning Hawaiian language or immersed in Hawaiian language, can engage in this sort of mainstream product and see themselves in a respectful way and see these words, see Solomon's art. Like, to me, that means so much for a world that when I grew up in knew looked nothing like me, right? So you never, they've talked about this with Disney, right? It means so much for representation to be able to see yourself in mainstream products. So I'm super excited. I'm so excited for you folks to connect with the Purple Maya people. I'm so excited for you to connect with Saul, because he's done this for decades, right? So this fit really great in things that Saul is he's avant-garde. He is totally ahead of all of us. He's ahead of his time. And to me, this is really the kind of opportunities that we look to. And then again, not only creates opportunities for Hawaiians that are in the field today, but inspires another generation of Hawaiians and Polynesians and hopefully indigenous people to start to create content and engage with new media. And so that's super exciting for me. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, hopefully come around actual launch time when people are getting this book in their hands, I really hope that they're inspired to take it and run with it and go explore the media that's being made and to really learn kind of what we're trying to be inspired by. Hopefully that, because it's just as interesting from my perspective as like Irish stories or Norse stories or Chinese stories. They're all beautiful and very distinct. And there are a lot of them that are just as complex because it has a whole culture built around it that people don't know about.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Solomon said earlier, we have this hugely vast intellectual world, right? We have all of these different origin stories. We have migration stories. We have cosmologies. And, you know, we are not a static culture. We didn't stop at, you know, when sort of Europe arrived. We kept going. And that's really what Solomon referenced when he says we are a resurging, blossoming culture that continues to evolve. And I think new media is so important in that, because it does just allow us all of these different platforms and venues to continue to have a dynamic culture. So I'm really excited. I think these connections are so important, right? It shows, you know, Solomon, of course, uses art and paint, but for some kids, it's going to be computers. It's going to be gaming. It's going to be these different things. It's going to be augmented reality. And it just creates so much space and opportunity to continue to thrive as a culture. So I'm so excited because this is not something we've had a lot of. So thank you for the opportunity.
I think kind of one of the major themes of the history to the setting that we put together, like the themes that we kind of try and the ones that we made up pretty much, where we have these northern settlers coming from this frosty land that has next to no resources and a growing population. So they're trying to escape that. And naturally, they're afraid they're going to gather these resources and they're going to sort of gut the land that they're moving into because they don't know how sustainable it is. And eventually we have the person that brought them there revealed to be a liar, as, you know, stories and drama, often that is one of the major things that creates them. So there's a clash, and the natives sort of come and help fight against this once the culture that has arrived, that they welcomed, has realized, oh, it's not us, it's this one guy that's the problem. And after the dust settles and they figured everything out, they decide to sort of come together and grow in a unified way. They both start learning from each other, and they're both very, I don't know, it was sort of a distant event that happened, but I think the way that we created the main settlement that they have now is really interesting in the way that it's directly integrated into nature. They don't have these sprawling farms or these huge mansions. It's, you know, just enough for the Ikolf people to have their nerves kind of set at ease. I think it's a
well, really... and what's really exciting to me is we certainly understand foreigners coming from a frosty place and, you know, lying more than a little and making our lives difficult. So in that part, I think it's a very familiar story to us. But, you know, again, So our traditional stories are called mo'olelo. And so to me, I love how really gaming and Dungeons and Dragons are about telling mo'olelo. You're telling stories. And what this has allowed for is sort of, a lot of our traditional stories happened prior to foreign contact, to European contact. This lets us start to tell new stories that weaves all of these things that have continued to happen to us in. And I think that's so, so important. And I love that at a very early age, we are introducing all of these different students and kids, and let's be real, adults, to the wonder of storytelling and the importance of storytelling, and storytelling in a way that is creative and thoughtful and thinking about justice and these things. So I really, really love those themes in it. And I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a raging hit. And I look forward to kids throughout Polynesia playing it.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome.
That'd be
awesome.
Mind blowing just to have that happening. Because I, got the stone rolling. That's really flattering. Forgot what I was going to say there. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, through the medium of role playing, it also helps build such a personal connection to the story that you're telling. I love the medium of role playing generally. So hearing the two of you talk about how it allows you to, express and further explore your culture and share it with so many more people is really heartwarming for me. And I just want to sit here and listen to the two of you talk, talk about it till the end of time. Yeah.
It's also a very personally empowering medium, for a lot of people who are struggling with confidence, to be able to sort of create a character in a setting and explore just a collaborative storytelling with your friends, and to have each of you be equally important in the telling. It's really, I think it is kind of paving the way for people to be more individually themselves. You can definitely see that if you go to any of the conventions that celebrate board games or D&D. You have these people walking around in insane outfits, and it's great just to have these people choose to be themselves instead of fall into sort of the worker bee mentality.
Well, and I love that you've created characters that particularly Indigenous or Polynesian children can see themselves in. So it's not us trying to fit ourselves into sort of this sort of foreign sleeve, right? It allows for a level of authenticity. That's really what I love about it, right? These are people that, we know all of these Indigenous children will see themselves in. It elevates people's understanding culturally, and it sort of recognizes diversity in all its many forms, whether gender or cultural heritage. So it is really exciting, and I was very, very thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah, it was really fun to explore all of the name recommendations that you have, because Hawaiian is such a unique language. So to go through and see people's attempts at translating kind of your vision behind these name changes was really exciting. It was a puzzle that I got to play with.
Well, I mean, and that's, I'll let Saul go. I mean, it is, right? I mean, there's so much depth to language and culture. It's not something you can kind of just grab out of a dictionary. It's so contextual.
It's not one-to-one,
Yeah, absolutely. And, for a Native culture, education is survival. The more we can share our story, the more likely our story will live on. It's real simple. It's real. We as a culture, we had to shapeshift. We had to transform from being an Indigenous Islander culture to being a global part of a global community.
The environment got quite a bit tougher.
Right. Just like when you're a shapeshifter, one of the conundrums of a shapeshifter is, what do you do with all your gear?
Oh yeah, right.
How do you take your clothes with you when you transform into a shark and you swim to the other side of the island? Where's all your clothes, right? So, how do you bring your accoutrements with you as you move into the new forms? And so,
palm leaf.
That's one of the conundrums that when we're talking about creating new content, we're finding a way to make clothes wherever we land. We're like, oh, let me grab this and just really cool. Make some clothes as I walk out of the water, But one thing I really love here is that we have our ka'au storytelling tradition. We have our stories, and we have our fanciful stories. So we already have a version of science fiction and fantasy. And as it happens within our legends, myths and legends, we go in and out. We have in our stories are values that tell you how to take care of this fish pond and how and where to build your houses so that the water doesn't come and flood.
Yeah. It's all
villages.
practical.
You know,
it's not.
it's
just,
all practical.
Yeah.
And
disciplinary.
just like your maps, you'll have a little dragon embellishment
Yeah.
in the corner, right?
Don't go there.
And there, right. So this idea exactly that we're going to have little fanciful elements that we weave into our very pragmatic stories as a way to keep things delicious, right? As a way to bring in a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of eye candy, but mostly nutrition, mostly something that allows that stories as a matter of survival.
Great way to put it.
So what I see that's what you folks are doing, if you think about it, it's like the traditional stories is like a bone, and science fiction and fantasy is like a splint that runs parallel to the bone. So role playing it basically runs parallel to the universe you guys created, runs parallel. It'll help us to understand and fix and preserve the traditional story by creating something that runs along with the story but isn't the story. You see? Again,
something that
sort
you
of
can
what
remove and then find out kind of the core.
Yeah. And then we would hope that people, because they play these games, they want to go learn Hawaiian, you know, or they want to learn Tahitian, or they want to actually get more connected with this part of the world. And that the work that you guys are creating is a great leaping off point, because there are some really powerful archetypes that you're bringing up in the stories that I think are a perfect segue into the traditional stories. And we're going to live on in all these different forms, you know, and that really means a lot to us as Native
I think a big part of it, we didn't want to just be on the nose. We didn't really want to antagonize individuals or certain types of cultures. So we tried to make it very open-ended, kind of the best way we could. It's you kind of choose who's in the wrong, but everybody thinks they're in the right. And that's always kind of the best stories to write, because then it gives the player kind of their own way to explore the story in an interested perspective.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, I think if you guys are good, we won't keep you for too long. We're probably just going to answer a few questions and then get into maybe some of the Norse themes that we played with. But
and I just want to basically end with a thank you. You know, I think Solomon and I both work with a lot of different groups, and it only works when people listen to our recommendations. So Solomon, I mean, I basically said he is the list. You want no one else. There's no one else. And I think it's worked out beautifully. So thank you for listening. Thank you for, you know, being receptive and open to different ideas. I think that's just from a engagement and working with an Indigenous community. This has been a wonderful example, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. So thank you folks very much.
Thank you for working.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for you know, sharing with us your culture, you know, and helping this this story be shaped and feel authentic, you know, like you may feel appreciative to us, but really we're indebted to you, you know, like we really feel appreciative that you've been open and receptive to us. And honestly, Solomon, do you want to get a beer or something? I just want to hang out with you, man. You seem you got such energy and
no, totally. Now you know, I'm like, I could sit here all day, but yes, you know, like Solomon, everybody, that's how everybody feels. You could just listen.
Wonderful. Well, I hope to roll some dice with you folks sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I really
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care. Aloha.
All right, and then we'll wait that out. Cool. Oh, there we are, divided right there. Let's bring ourselves back in. We look a little funky.
We're back.
Bam. It's back to the two of us.
I've been caching some of the questions that sort of weren't relevant to the discussion at the time, but some things that people have been asking. Just sending it to myself in Slack is the way that I keep notes. Somebody had a question about the tone, the predominant tone of the adventure. They mentioned that there's a time limit. I don't know if there's so much a time limit. I mean, you can correct me. The 20 weeks isn't like it has to be done. You know, in a real world amount of time. They can spend as long or as short as they want in the you know, exploring each week of the adventure, to my understanding.
No, actually, the in-game timeline is very rigid. There are very specific events that take place, and at the end, there is a war for the Isles, where you have you know, these forces that have been mounting at the expense of the forces that you're trying to mount. So you're running around gathering as many allies as you can from these different communities and trying to save them from the destruction that is just sweeping over everything. And then at the end, you clash against them pretty much at the gate between the reality that you have and then the being that created the reality that is trying to destroy it. And then once you get there, once you cross that divide, you get over to the bridge, the game is going to end before you leave.
Sure.
But I really think that it's not so much that the tone is like race, we have to get there. It's a lot of it is really tough decisions that you don't even really know that you make, especially on your first run through, because in addition to being, you know, it's not just a railroad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 20 adventures. Each week you have this place or that place that you can go to. And for the most part, you hear either like what's going on there, you hear from a friend that says that you should visit there. But based on your decisions, you can gain something and lose something based on where you didn't go. So this group of people that you maybe met before and were supposed to go see again, they might have just vanished because you weren't there to help them escape this horrible event. So it's just tough decisions going all the way through. And then at the end, whether you've gathered all the allies in the world or you have completely failed, you can still get through that gate and get the ending of the game. So a lot of it is just exploration and figuring out kind of, it's decision making.
Sure. Somebody asking about undead dwarves haunting the seas. What was the inspiration there? They make a reference to the Flying Dutchman, but was that your thoughts?
It's interesting. So, like designing it, I had the triad of enemies. You know, you have the local spirit that is the core island, that is its shape-shifting body form, and then you have the undead king, who is the guy that, you know, came and ruined everything and now he's back. And then you have the deity and its forces. But for the undead king, from the very beginning, I wanted 3 of them. So I was like, just a further divide of 3. So the main leader is this undead king. And then he raises 2 people, one from ancient history before his time and one from recent history who he's never met. So he pulls these 2 people that he doesn't know from the grave. One of them is a pirate who came with the recent influx in trade to the Isles, and then one of them is an ancient, native. So you have these 3 people that are in every facet of the adventure. You can find these undead anywhere because they are massively affecting just the general environment. But so we have this kind of, you know, Flying Dutchman guy called Captain Keelhaul, and then you have these kind of White Walkers, more or less. You have these blood zombies that are fighting against this natural setting. Like in Hawaiian mythology, there's no such thing as undead. That has never occurred. So the way that we kind of explored that is, well, what if these people from a different culture, from a different world with different magic show up and they have undead?
Gotcha.
And then it's just this big mix. So that's kind of the inspiration for how the undead function.
Sure, for sure. Favorite monster stat block in the book? I know I haven't read the stat blocks yet, but I know Shrimp Lord is just my favorite by default.
I do have one now because we talked about that in the podcast.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Yeah, on the Average Forecast.
There is a construct at the top of the very top of the largest mountain that is protecting a temple, and it is called the Seven-Faced Steward. It's just this colossal thing with a head that has rows of these faces. Each of them resemble important characters in the setting. And its scariest attack, like one of the coolest actions I think I've ever designed, is just called Speak. And on each turn, like at the start, either at the start of the round or at the start of its turn, it goes like ka-chunk, and then it says something. And the domain that the face covers determines the effect, but each of these effects massively changes the way that the fight goes. And you can either have it happen randomly on a die table, or you can just have it shift so that it just breaks down the players in a different way every time.
Somebody asking, when did you begin this project? I'm just going to extrapolate. It was a very simple question, but I want to extrapolate that out a little bit. I'm not sure if this is what they were asking, but like, you know, you've worked on 3 projects now, being Stibble's Codex of Companions and Seeker's Guide, and this is the first one that's like a narrative kind of start to finish.
Yeah.
Seeker's had a through line. Again, you correct me, but what it was, yeah, exactly. It was kind of like, segmented, almost like Tales from the Yawning Portal as kind of a through line. How long does has it taken you to write this adventure module, I suppose, and like, yeah, from first conception, sketching out ideas to the point where we're launching the Kickstarter and going into production?
I think each one of these projects has had a really different workflow. So for Stibbles, I always wanted to put together a bunch of pets, so I've like already had a list going in that I wanted to do, and then from there, once we got greenlit, it was just okay, make 100 of them. Seeker's Guide, the core idea was just okay, what if we had a bunch of isolated settings that GMs can use to kickstart an adventure at like any level, because that's where adventures start. So like, why not just make a bunch of starts that are free? And then with this one, actually a long time ago, a friend of mine had me make like a homebrew, just a game that we planned on playing and never did, based on Darkest Dungeon, which is a really bone grinder, just like a digital game. It's really tough. It's a side scroll, like combat choice making game. So I made a bunch of classes, and I made all these villains, and I made like a setting. I was like, okay, there are themes of like a lot of Lovecraft themes, so why not put it on a beach? And then it started evolving from that. And then when I started my Kickstarter, when my channel was small, I had the idea for this supplement. I think it was while we were doing Stibbles, so it was like 2 years ago, where like, let's, put together a setting and make a writer's room while we play. So a lot of the stuff that happened, like the stuff that the players did to affect the game, is hinted at in the book. Like there's a bell clapper that is a huge weapon that people can use, and that's because that's something that happened in the game. So yeah, this one was worked on for quite a while in the background, like the concept of it. And then when we actually got down to the nitty gritty, it was like a race through 2 months of just writing.
It's, knowing how much is in there, that is intense.
202,000 words, I think, which is equitable to the player's handbook, but it doesn't have just 30% spells. It's a whole adventure.
For sure. Somebody asked, and I think this was based off of some of the things that Trisha and Solomon were saying about shape-shifting PCs, whether it's possible to play a shape-shifting PC, but I guess this is also a gateway for you to touch on some of the player races that can be played that are unique to Monarchy.
So when we started doing it, I wanted to have like a bunch of like subclasses that people could play. So I had a few, because that was the starting point for the old idea of this setting. And then when I transferred them in, I realized, none of these fit the vision anymore. And then as the pace kind of went on, we weren't able to add any of them. But definitely we have some really interesting player races. And of course, naturally, there are existing mechanics in D&D that you can use to shapeshift a lot. That's not something that is central to the adventure. There are a lot of other themes that we play off of, but if you want to include that as a major part of maybe your player character when you're designing them to enter the game, absolutely do that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And yeah, when it comes to the playable races or the playable species, these groups of characters, like I said before, we have the Meyer scales, which are these really just strange, it's weird how they came about. So there's a bunch of pirates and poachers who steal eggs. They cross over a chaotic abyss. They end up on the other side, half baby dinosaur, half pirate. And then they crash land on a swamp area and have no idea what to do, have no way to leave. So they are forced to settle. And this weird, bizarre culture starts just happening off in the distance that you start to hear about when they bring that into the market.
Sure.
And then we have the Decapodians, who have kind of evolved from the idea that lobsters don't, my cats are fighting, that's fun, where lobsters don't die of old age. They just keep getting bigger until something kills them. So the eldest character is called Old Shell, and he's just, I think, this gargantuan actual lobster. Like other people have, or rather these, the playable races that players can do exist just in like auxiliary to him. Because he was able to get that old, he started affecting the area around him, and he kind of manifested these lobster people and these pistol shrimp people that are visually amazing. And then, of course, we have the underwater race of these defender fish people that are really interesting, where they are mostly all born as females, and then at a certain point in their life, when they reach like full maturity, they become males. They get larger, like their bodies get more like tough and muscular, and they take on a different role in the culture that they've kind of made around that. And you can play as any of them. You can play either as an older, Kiai, which are these sea defenders. You can play as a younger female and sort of understand where that character comes from through the backgrounds and stuff that we've given them.
The artwork for these is just incredible. I'm just looking at the Kickstarter page at the moment. What I can see on there is some of the miniatures for some of the player races that we're working on at the moment, and based on artwork, I know we've been leaking on for the Kiai. Yeah, we leaked on the Discord the artwork that turned into the miniature, and it's just very cool kind of seeing that evolution from your idea into conception into physical miniature. Do they like
layers?
When you see the artwork, are you just like, yes, that's what I had in my head? Or how is that for you? Is it a collaborative when an artist adds something and you're like, yeah, that's perfect. That's not what I had, but I think that captures what I'm after better.
That's one of the major things that we wanted to do with this project, where we only wanted to have the major notes of the adventure. Like, this has to be there. The rest, I want the artist to have freedom when designing them.
Gotcha.
And definitely with the I think both subraces of the Decapodians, the lobster and the pistol shrimp people, they came out not at all how I was expecting, but I absolutely love both of them. They are visually insane. The Kiai were a little bit more developed, and it's very difficult to make something that looks different than like merfolk or the Sahuagin, the shark people. And I think what we came with is really cool, how their clothing sort of is their body, and it's this big, flowy, kind of like a betta fish, just drifts behind them as they swim, so it's really interesting. I think some of the locations, because of the speed of the project, there were like really minor just description changes, where like this thing is supposed to be in an isolated area, but around it you can see like a big vast the rest of the island. But that just kind of comes with the project. There's minor miscommunications, but overall I think a lot of the major points, especially the each of the villains and a lot of the actual scenes of events that happened in the history that are happening now, are some of my favorite. They're really, really cool.
Somebody just asking, with the Norse inspiration, would you say that these are the villains or a neutral force? Does that tie into what you were saying before in terms of like everybody thinks they're right, but there's always conflict?
Yeah, I think that the Norse people are definitely not the villains. They essentially are fully integrated now with the culture that is in Manaki. So you have the Icolf people, the descendants of Icolf, as they're called in the game now, because they're not separate. We have art of people even in one of the main images where they're, because the natives have white hair, and then you have the dwarves who have like a darker range of hair, and then you have some people that just have darker hair and they're taller, and you're like, oh, okay, so that means that they have fully kind of integrated together. They're working as a single group of people. I think the actions of some of the ancestors and the ones that are getting revived of the Norse-based settlers were very intrusive, but I wouldn't want to demonize either of the cultures. It's all because of one or two people. That's always how history has always worked. Yeah. So that's kind of how the story we want to communicate is, this guy caused problems. Now he's back, and you can fix it with everyone else that's got your back.
For sure. This was a bit of a fun one, having worked on 3 published / to be published projects now. Is there anything that you've ever designed mechanically for 5e that's been exploited by players? The question specifically, like if I read the exact wording, it's like, what do you think the most exploitable thing you've created is? Can you recall anything that people have just been like, I'm going to use this to do that?
That is a tough question. I definitely think, because like, how do you answer that? I don't know how people have exploited it. I can guess, but it's my job to make sure that you can't exploit it. So it's
got to be something. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm almost asking the wrong person, because like, I'm not going to exploit my stuff. I don't want to. I want to play it narratively, but I would absolutely have to say some of the magic items, probably. They tip the scale for sure, because you just have rarities, and instead of like CR 1 to 20, which isn't even accurate, it doesn't perfectly represent the difficulty of a monster. You have common, uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary artifact. That's what, like 6? So I have to create a magic item that doesn't conform to the way that 5e magic works, because items are crazy, and then try and guess how useful it is, like how rare it is, how people can get it. Yeah, I definitely think hopefully we'll hit that stretch goal pretty soon, and hopefully by the end of today we'll hit 100,000 and we'll have that second donation gone, because that's all that I really care about.
Somebody was actually just asking about the stretch goals. As only 3 are visible at the moment. You can see that it's like a little bit of a scroll. You can just see the 4th stretch goal there at the moment.
We did that with too.
Yeah, exactly. As those get hit, we may reveal more of them as the Kickstarter goes on. So, the more we unlock, the more gets revealed.
One of the most exciting ones is going to be the Weapon of Legend, Allay, which is this... like, the editor came to me and they were like, hey, I get how this works narratively, but so it's this magic item that there's a really cool part of Hawaiian mythology where... I don't know the right English word for that. The culture, I guess you could say, is that blood is not that important. Where in more Norse mythology, you have like the warmth that is very important. Blood is water, which is a life force. But in this setting where they're surrounded by water, bones are a lot more like important in a spiritual way. So the base of this weapon in its full design is actually a bone from the being that painted it. That created this location. So it starts with a bone, and then we have like 8 other magic items that you can slap on it, and you can dip it in a location and then have it have more magic. So it's this cumulative, stupidly broken magic item that when you get to the end of it, you can literally just kill God with a stick. So that's probably exploitable.
You went 20 levels, so it's going to start to get crazy at the top end anyway.
Yeah.
Just having a quick look here.
We're kind of coming up on the end, relatively.
Yeah, that's true.
Those were all
just wanted to quickly say one of the fun things about working in the Ghostfire office is that when prototypes for physical products and things start to come in, we get to see them as they roll in. We always get really excited when miniatures show up. So I'm very excited for when we start to see some of the player races show up in physical form. At the moment, we've got the scroll, the dice scroll. I've been showing this off all morning. I did it on the Eldritch Lorecast before. Basically, this is what it looks like. This is a prototype, so this might not be 110% of what the final thing looks like, but we think we're pretty close, but it's very nice leather. Then when you unplug it, I mean, they show this on the Kickstarter. My camera makes this look like super orange. I swear to God, with my eyeballs, it's not this orange. Yeah. It is a little, it's because my ring light is too bright. I'll get up and show you. But best bit is inside the zip.
That is super cool. I love that part of it.
The Infinity Stones. That's what I keep calling them.
They're so ridiculously vibrant. Like, they kind of remind me of like old game shops, but when you actually get to look at them close up, the inside is really, really cool looking. They feel like Infinity Stones.
For sure. I mean, there's like little bits that reflect through them. There's kind of like a crystallization. They're also, and again, this is a prototype, super sharp at this kind of stage of development. So
send me those.
Yeah, but they're very cool. Yeah, well, I've got a spare. I've got our other prototype just on the bench there.
Can't wait for those. That's exciting.
Yeah, I just thought that was cool. It's always exciting when the prototypes start to come in, and then like comparing stuff as well and going like, is this what we want to go with? Is this version? So roll up my scroll.
Yeah, a couple questions that I'd like to address. One of them, what is the name of the space-looking deity? It has a handful of names and like when we were putting the project together, I had like 4 or 5 of them, and the writers kept coming back to me like, look, I don't know who we're talking about anymore. So I condensed a bunch of names, and it's the name of the deity is the Star Breather in the setting. That is sort of their core concept, and it falls in line with how when they exhale, they sort of sigh, they give life to something, and they are sacrificing their own power to do so. Trisha had a really interesting name that I would have loved to implement, but it was a little bit late into how we did the project, and it was like the one that births the stars, or the one that gives birth to the stars, which was such a cool different way to look at it. And then for people who maybe got to the end of the Seeker's Guide Secret Hunt, you could also call this deity the Evoker.
Okay.
Yeah, a little tell there.
It's hiding it in there.
Yeah, and then am I going to make more books? Yes, I'm going to go on break, and then I'll come back with like 3 or 4.
2 months he wrote a book in, so you know.
Really got to get a bit more of that time back. Just breathe, start breathing out. What was the other?
Somebody had a question, sorry, before I think to copy and paste it. It was about here it is. Will there be ship combat? If so, will it have new elements compared to how vehicle combat is in Ghosts of Saltmarsh and Descent into Avernus?
Yes. We took a look at Saltmarsh. We said that's too complicated, and we really didn't like how it was divided. That is a stretch goal a little bit far down the line, but we're on the first day. Hopefully, once we get a bit more promotion out there, a bit of word of mouth, people will hit that stretch goal, and we'll be able to add this massive, really cool system that we designed where it simplifies a lot of the problems. I think with Saltmarsh, where instead of having everyone sort of not play their characters and just do like one thing and then roll for the boat to see if it works or not, what we're doing is we're having sort of like layer actions where at the start of combat, if you're in the area and that is your post, you can take that sort of ship action, and then it falls right back into combat and you can keep going. There's a lot that we want to explore in sailing. Like there's a lot of boats that we want to add to the book. There's a lot of really, because as the game goes, magic gets a lot more and more prevalent as it is pouring out of this one location. So everything's going haywire. And there are moments where the stars can start falling from the sky and hit your ship. Or the ocean will rise up and manifest as this gargantuan water elemental that you have to punch back to keep going forward. So there's a lot out on the water that we hope people will get to explore.
Is it correct that the boats, like their statistics, are basically stat blocks to keep it simple for the dungeon master?
Yeah, we don't really want to segment them like Saltmarsh did. Saltmarsh had a lot of really interesting ideas when you want to get like accurate and you want to have these problems be very specific. But for players who just kind of want to get on the boat, fight a bunch of dead pirates, and then make it to Dinosaur Island, like we wanted to make that just as fun and kind of simple as possible.
Yeah, that really specific slice of players. They just want to go to Dinosaur Island and... Cool. I think that's my backlog of questions.
I think that's probably about the end. That last question, do I have a Discord? If not, could I make one? I have 2. And both of them, I think, are always linked in video descriptions. If not, the main one is, at least. Yeah, I think with that, we're probably going to wrap up the stream, and I'll post a video tomorrow for the people who are interested in, RuneSmith, that whole thing that I do.
Exciting.
Yeah.
You're also on the Eldritch Lorecast this week, talking more about Sunken Isles. So I think we did talk a little bit about what we've talked about today, but if people want to, they can't get enough Sunken Isles, they can go there, check it out.
Or you want to go see James Hayek? Just
James Hayek.
Have
or Dale Kingsmill.
Yeah.
If you want to hear the two most buttery voices talk to each other about D&D, the Eldritch Lorecast when James and Logan are on it together is
James
just
does have a really smooth voice.
Both, yeah, the both of you. I just feel completely vocally intimidated whenever I'm whenever I'm on a podcast with the both of you.
It's a gift from my dad.
Yeah, I don't mean to make you feel uncomfortable here.
No, you're good. All right. I think, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just kind of drop out. Let me transition everything. We'll give you guys a couple more minutes of the art, and then it's going to go over. I'll hang out in the chat for any questions that I can answer easily. Let me, oh, you know what? I can just do that. Bam. All right. See you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for donating. You didn't have to, but you did. Peace.
Catches.